Welcome to F1 Blogs. We're just a few races into the 2025 Formula One season, and honestly, it's already quite a stark picture compared to how Ferrari finished last year.
It really is.
Yeah.
They were on such a high note towards the end of 2024.
Yeah, absolutely flying. And now, well, bitterly disappointing. Feels like the right phrase for their start this year. Makes you wonder, what's actually gone wrong?
It's definitely raised a few eyebrows. So today, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into exactly that. Try and unpack the reasons behind this sudden downturn for Ferrari.
We'll be looking at the analysis and discussion from us here at F1 Blogs, really piecing together the technical side, the performance.
Exactly. The mission here is to figure out what's behind this slump, especially given the initial optimism and, let's face it, some pretty big changes to their car. We want to give you a clear, thorough understanding.
Okay, so let's set the scene. End of 2024. Ferrari was, arguably, the top-scoring team after the August break.
They were, yeah. Really strong performance run.
Came within just, 15 points of McLaren in the Constructors? The momentum felt huge.
It absolutely did. There was this real sense that they'd cracked something important performance-wise, and that the new car, the SF25, would just build on that. Expectations were genuinely high.
And then the SF25 is unveiled, and it's practically brand new. I think Fred Verst, the team principal, said something like more than 99% new.
Yeah, that's a huge number. It signals a massive overhaul, not just fiddling around the edges.
A really fundamental redesign.
Clearly, they felt big changes were needed to, really fight at the very front. And one of the most obvious changes, visually at least, was the switch to pull rod front suspension.
Ah, yes, the pull rod. Which is interesting because quite a few other teams have been using that for a while now.
That's right. Ferrari were definitely, let's say, latecomers to that particular trend. For anyone maybe less familiar, the pull rod setup, it can potentially allow for better airflow management around the front wing and under the nose compared to the more traditional push rod.
So potentially an aerodynamic gain they were chasing there. And they also stretched the car out a bit, lengthened the wheelbase.
They did. Lois Serra, their technical director, mentioned it was about finding more space, basically giving the aerodynamicists more room to play, particularly underneath the car.
Sounds like a pretty comprehensive aero concept then. Longer wheelbase, pull rod front, aiming for more downforce overall.
Exactly. More platform to work the airflow. And look, the data does suggest the SF25 is faster than last year's car at the same tracks. It is an improvement.
Right, but here's the kicker.
Yeah, the crucial point is that other teams seem to have found bigger gains. So, relatively speaking, Ferrari's slipped back.
Making them, the fourth fastest car on average right now?
That seems to be the consensus, yeah. Fourth fastest. Which, after finishing 2024 so strongly is, it's tough.
It really is, and you saw that starkly in Miami, didn't you? Being challenged and even beaten by Williams. Alex Albon finishing ahead of both Ferraris.
Oof, yeah. That Miami race really highlighted the performance gap, didn't it? A real wake-up call, perhaps.
It felt like a low point performance-wise, but okay, it hasn't all been bad, has it? There have been some good moments.
No, absolutely. You've got Lewis Hamilton's sprint successes, the win in China, third in Miami.
And Leclerc grabbing that podium in Saudi Arabia. His race pace looked pretty decent there, actually.
It did. Those moments show there's some potential locked away in the car. It's not a complete disaster.
Yeah.
But they've been flashes rather than consistent form.
Overshadowed by the generally disappointing race results and then, China. The main race was just
a shocker. Yeah, double exclusion. Charles Leclerc underweight, Lewis Hamilton with too much plank wear. Just a weekend to forget completely for them, definitely. But even setting aside those specific issues, the underlying race pace in places like Miami was, frankly, worrying. Leclerc qualifying over half a second off Verstappen. That's a big gap.
And a lot of that time loss came in that slow section, didn't it? Turns 11 to 16.
Exactly. He lost something like 4/10 just in those few corners compared to Verstappen. That points to a real weakness in low-speed grip.
4/10 is huge in such a small part of the track.
It is. And it showed in the race, too. Leclerc finishing 7th, nearly a minute, 57 seconds behind the winner.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a massive deficit.
And then you had that little spat over team orders in Miami playing out so publicly, maybe suggests the pressure's starting to tell internally.
It can happen, can it? When the results aren't there, frustrations can boil over. So, okay, let's dig into these root causes. Low-speed corners seem to be a major headache.
Yeah, traction seems to be a problem on corner exit. We've heard about front brake lockups too, and just general understeer of the car not wanting to turn in sharply.
Which is interesting because that mechanical grip, the grip from the tires and the suspension itself, used to be a real Ferrari strength.
Exactly. It feels like that advantage is just gone this year.
Which is particularly concerning for somewhere like Monaco, which is almost all about low-speed mechanical grip. Doesn't exactly bode well for Clerk's home race chances.
And that big switch, the pull rod front suspension, you have to wonder if that's playing a part. Making such a fundamental change quite late in a rule cycle, it's always a bit of a gamble.
It is a gamble. And it's interesting, the H-Team principal, A.K. Komatsu, he made a point about how sometimes the aero gains from something like pull rod, they require you to re-optimize everything else around it, so you might actually take a step back initially.
Before you find the gains again.
Precisely. And it feels like maybe Ferrari's recovery from that initial hit, if that's what it is, has been slower than they hoped.
Could it be the suspension internals too? Not just the geometry, getting that ride height control right?
That's very possible. It might not just be the pull rod layout itself, but the dampers, the springs, how they all work together to control the car, especially keeping it in that incredibly narrow ride height window that you need for the aerodynamics to work properly.
Right, because if you can't run the car low enough, consistently, you lose downforce. And we know they've had issues with plank wear.
Exactly. Skid wear. If you're constantly worried about wearing the plank away and getting penalized, you might be forced to run the rear just a fraction higher than you ideally want.
Even a millimeter makes a difference, right?
Oh, absolutely. A millimeter too high at the rear can cost you significant downforce from the floor and diffuser. It just upsets the whole balance.
It's all connected, isn't it? The aero, the mechanical side. I read they even tried fixing some early season high-speed understeer by basically accepting more rear instability on corner entry for slower turns.
Yeah, Clerk mentions some extreme setup experiments starting around Japan. It sounds like they're making compromises, trying to find the least worst balance across different types of corners.
Which isn't ideal, and maybe explain some of Hamilton's difficulties if the car's a bit snappy on entry.
Could well be. And this compromise setup, it likely prevents them running at that optimal low ride height consistently, which brings back the plank wear risk. It's a difficult cycle.
A real catch-22. And some old problems seem to linger too, like finding that ultimate one-lap pace in qualifying. Still a bit inconsistent there.
It seems so, yeah. That peak qualifying performance isn't always there. And tire management? Sometimes it looks good, like Jeddah, the rear's held on well, but other times, not so much. It's not a reliable strength.
So the overall picture is a car that's just hard to predict. Capricious, maybe. Inconsistent.
Those words fit, I think. The sweet spot seems incredibly narrow, almost impossible to find and stay in consistently. It really does feel like that bold step, the big redesign, has kind of backfired, at least for now.
Yeah, in terms of results, definitely. Now, how's the team leadership framing this? Fred Verse, he's trying to stay positive publicly, right?
Understandably, yes. He talks about the small gaps, especially in qualifying sometimes. The potential he still believes is in the car.
After Miami, his explanation was mostly about not getting the tires working right, which, to be fair, is crucial for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Pirelli tire management is key, and there's likely performance everyone can still unlock there. But you contrast that with Jacques Clerc's comments after Miami qualifying.
He was pretty blunt, wasn't he?
He was. Basically said he felt they were pretty close to the maximum the car could give right now.
Which leads directly to upgrades. Clerc basically said, we need upgrades, and fast, if they want to find more performance.
Yep. And Verse confirmed some small upgrades are coming for Imola and Monaco. Incremental steps.
But the Spanish Grand Prix, that feels like the big one, potentially.
It's shaping up that way.
Yeah.
Lots of teams are expected to bring significant updates there, especially around the front wing, partly because of that new technical directive.
Ah, the TD clamping down on front wing flexibility. Reducing the allowed movement from 15 millimeters down to 10 millimeters.
That's the one. And also tightening rules on the flexibility of other bits, like the end plate attachments, the fish plates. Verse called Barcelona a potential reset of performance for all teams.
A reset. Could that actually help Ferrari if maybe they haven't exploited flexible wings as much as others, or if it helps them achieve better balance across different speed corners?
It's possible. Flexible wings are a big tool for managing aero balance. If Ferrari has struggled there, maybe tighter rules level the playing field a bit. It could help address that balance inconsistency we talked about.
But you wouldn't want to get too optimistic.
Probably not. It won't fix any underlying mechanical grip issues. And there are those rumors about potential rear suspension tweaks later on, which suggests they know there's more fundamental work needed beyond just the front wing.
Okay, so the championship. Realistically, challenging for titles this year seems unlikely now.
Very unlikely, yeah. The points gap is just huge already, both constructors and drivers. Over 150 points in the constructors, Clerk nearly 80 points behind in the drivers. That's a massive mountain to climb.
Which inevitably raises the question about 2026. The new rules, when do they fully switch focus?
Well, Ferrari have been pretty clear. They started putting significant effort into 2026 right from the start of this year. Vers confirmed that late last season.
So it's not like 2026 has been ignored.
Not at all. The dilemma now is more about whether they pull back resources from 2026 to try and salvage something more from 2025.
But the thinking is that's probably not wise, because the development curve on a new rules car is so steep early on.
Exactly. Versus the much flatter curve you get trying to squeeze the last tenths out of a mature rule set car like the current one. Diverting resources away from 26 now could be really damaging long term.
Vers said back in April they'd made the final call on resource allocation after the first 5 races, didn't he? Miami was race 6.
So you'd imagine that decision has probably been made internally by now. But honestly, whatever they decide about development focus, the absolute priority has to be understanding what went wrong with this 2025 car.
Because they're using the same tools, the same knowledge base, the same simulation methods to design the 2026 car.
Precisely. They don't understand why the SF25 isn't meeting expectations if they can't pinpoint the flaws in their process or understanding that led to this car.
They risk baking those same flaws into the 2026 design.
That's the danger. So learning the lessons from this year is paramount, regardless of championship position. That deep understanding is critical for their future.
Okay, so wrapping this up, Ferrari's 2025 has been a real letdown so far. Big car changes haven't paid off as hoped, leaving them struggling, particularly in slow corners and with overall consistency. Upgrades are coming, rule tweaks might help a bit.
But the fundamental job is understanding why this car isn't working as expected. That's the key takeaway.
Right. And that leads to a final thought for you listening at home. Given how much effort Ferrari has already poured into the 2026 project, just how big a setback would it be long-term if they can't truly figure out the SF25's problems? What does it mean for their competitiveness under the huge rule changes coming if they can't learn these crucial lessons now? Something to definitely think about.
A critical question indeed.
And for more deep dives and analysis on everything happening in Formula One, make sure you hit subscribe here on F1 Blogs. We'll keep digging into the stories that matter.